No, the Becker comes into the library.
No.
Takes her the books on me.
Yeah, yeah, no.
She left them in the basement.
No, it just vibrated, so see what it was. I want to show your name.
Okay, anyway, I wanted to tell you that I spoke to Dave Cheslow. If after Yom Kippur, or at the latest after Sukkot,
Yeah.
after Yom Kippur, if that group goes into the main, back into the main shul to daven, well, that I don't know, but I was just asking about our
Yeah.
being able to go back into the base midrash.
And if
So he says if it's so long as they are able to start it back into the main shul, the 8:30 minyan,
evidently they're having difficulty with the meeting.
right? But I'm saying, but if they continue at 8. All right,
That's why you didn't get.
that far I didn't get, one step at a time, right?
I have to wait till after Sukkot because with Hallel and laning.
Well, that's the question. That's why I said at the earliest Yom Kippur, but after Sukkot, there should be no reason why they couldn't be davening their 8:30 minyan in the main show. Okay, so I'm going to start with our sponsors and then we'll move on, all right? To the Gemara. Everybody can hear me all right with the mask on? If not, I'll slightly lower it. Okay? All right, the Lone Ranger and I, that
Okay,
way have
Tato.
something in common. You can always ask, who is that masked man? That's what they used to do, right? Question is, what did Kimosabi really
Yeah,
mean?
That's why there's only one Ranger found out he shot down. Stupid white man.
And right, what? That's right. Oh, too bad they don't show that still. I don't know. And they could update it a little bit too.
So much Amos and Andy.
Learning sponsors: Sue and Arnie Gerlich in memory of Malcolm Perlman and Philip Mann, and Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Henya Rivka Pro Raznabas Arav Tzvi Hirsch, and in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust. Arav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Marcia Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon, Sharon and Fred Liska, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edelbas Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan. Is that Zev trying to say? In memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sabella, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gidler, Avramea ben Shimon, and Martha Gidler, China bat Yeshaya. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, in her memory. Friends of Malka Levy, Malka bat Yosef. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim, Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine, in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata bat Asher. The Month of Learning by Lynn Rappaport, in memory of her husband, Avraham ben Sion HaKohen. A Week of Learning by Michael and Sharon Glass, Memory of his mother Rivka Yita Bat Yitzchak Kohen by Jonas and Clara Weiser. Memory of his mother Chaya Bat Yoni Yitzchak by Robin Lerner. In memory of her father Reuben Ben Yosef. Today is the 12th, right? And so we don't have any others today. The Neshama have Aliyah, Crank Rafi about the Yeshua Shamatzliah, the Chobane Yisrael, Good Kabbalah Shnia.
Amen.
Here he is. Yeah. Okay. All right, Zev, we got you.
I stopped on the other million, they didn't have a million, I was 10th one.
Right. But they got it, yeah. Right?
Yeah. 2 people walked in.
Okay. All right.
Every time I go on Flint more, it's Flint more.
Yeah. Okay. Wasn't that the name of the actor? Okay. Let us start very quickly. I'm looking at Yud Aleph Amud Beis towards the very bottom. Okay, they were dealing the 3 lines from the bottom there. Okay, or 4 lines roughly about there. Okay, there was a talk about this, a door or a shutter that had a hinge. That's what the discussion was. Okay, right, just quickly leading that, B'med Varim Umarim B'sheyesh lehen sir, when it has a pivot or a hinge, right? Aval ein lehen sir divrei hakol mutar. And everybody said that kind of shutter was acceptable. Bahat Tanya, okay, I'm picking up there about 3 lines in the middle from the bottom on Yud Aleph Amud Beis, right? Okay. B'med varim amorim b'she'ein lehen sir. We're talking about when the shutter did not have a hinge whatsoever. Aval yesh lehen sir, when it did have a hinge, okay? Divrei hakol asur, then it would be forbidden. Amar Abaye, says Abaye, b'sheyesh lehen sir min hatzad. Divrei hakol asur. When it had it on the side, says Abaye, that's when it was forbidden. Ein lehen sir kol ikar, divrei hakol mutar. Okay, that if it had no hinge whatsoever, all right, then it was totally, according to everybody, permitted. Keep pligi, where did they argue then? B'sheyesh lehen sir ba'emtza. According to this, still seems to be Abaye's view, right? That when it had a hinge in the middle. I don't think that Art Scroll had drawings.
They do.
They do?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, okay. I didn't have, all right, but Cohen also had color drawings. Oh, right, okay.
Right.
So the middle one, I think there in Art Scroll is the one with it in the middle, right?
First one. First one.
All the
First
way on
one.
the right.
On the right, okay. So you have one with the one sticking out,
That's
Sort of,
and the other
right.
ones are
and
on
the
side.
other is one on top and bottom.
Right.
Okay, I always keep thinking of, so if you think sometimes in restaurants, between the kitchen and going into the main hall, what?
The swinging.
Swinging doors.
Door.
Right, that's probably what we could best relate to in terms of, all right?
The saloon.
No, I was never in the saloon. No, okay, Mar Savar Gazrin and Sir Be'emtza Atut Sir Minatzad on Yud Bet, today's daf, right? One master holds that we make a decree when the hinge is in the middle, right? Why? Since that the hinge could have been on the side. Omar Savar Lo Gazrinan, and the other says, no, we don't make such a decree. Okay, so we're now going to get to new material for today with a Mishnah, but this really isn't new material, the next few Mishnayot, because we saw them referred to in previous discussion earlier. Remember, we saw the issue of the animal hide and stomping on it, walking on it, things like that. So this is what we're going to see a series of Mishnayot. dealing with items that we've come across. Matnitin, says our new Mishnah. Beit Shammai omrim ein motzein lo et hakatan, v'lo et halulav, v'lo et hasefer Torah, the Rishut Harabi. According to Beit Shammai, one is not permitted to transfer from one Rishus to another Rishus on Yom Tov, with the exception of Ochel Nefesh items. Okay? Therefore, you can't carry out a child, you can't carry a lulav, you can't carry a Sefer Torah. From the public domain, okay, out into the public domain, I'm sorry, right? Beit Hillel Matirin. But Beit Hillel is saying, no, it does not have to be simply carrying for the purpose of food options, Ochel Nefesh. You could carry out otherwise. So what are we going to see? We're going to see this argument in a moment, based entirely on the concept, Hutra Letzorech, Hutra Shanami Shelo Letzorech. Okay, so now we can go on. Gemara says, Tani, Tana Kame de Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi. A Tana, okay, taught the following attempted explanation of the Mishnah in front of Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi. Hashochet olat nidava biyom tov loka, right? One who slaughters a voluntary olah, okay, on Yom Tov gets malchus, right? So Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi responds, Amarle de Amar Lachmani. In other words, who told you this? Who taught it? Right? Beit Shammai. So this is, again, I'm suggesting that this is still Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi continuing his challenge to that Tana. Okay? It's got to be Beit Shammai. Why? The Amrei, because they the ones that say, Lo amrinin mitoch shehutra hotza'a letzorach, hutra nami shelo letzorach. That they're the ones who say, we do not hold by the idea that when it's permitted to carry out for a purpose, okay, it's therefore permissible to carry out even not for that food-oriented purpose. Okay, the Beit Hillel, because we're to be Beit Hillel, ha'amrei. Here they say, mitoch shehutra hotzara letzorech, utra nami shelo letzorech, because it was needed to bring it out, okay, for what we'll say is the purpose of food purposes, ochel nefesh, right? Okay, it is permitted also to carry it out for other purposes as well. Okay, hachanami here too, mitoch shehutra shchita letzorech. Therefore, if we're to be Beit Hillel, they could argue, since slaughtering is permitted on a Yom Tov for ochel nefesh, right? Therefore, slaughtering in general would be permitted on a Yom Tov, which would imply that, okay, that statement
So then the price that says he gets malchus is not correct.
would not,
Yeah,
according to Beis Hillel. Right, exactly. Okay,
Is that the dean?
well, we'll see. Okay. Okay. Now, let's see how there's going to be a challenge. Okay. Rabbah is going to challenge the explanation of Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdim. Okay. And really broad definition. Okay. Mad kifla Rabbah. So Rabbah challenges, and he says as follows: Mimai debate Shammai ubeit Hillel v'hapligi. How do you know? He says basically that the argument of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, that this is the essence of their argument, namely, okay, hutra, I'll use that for an abbreviated, okay? In other words, Rabba's argument is going to be maybe Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel's argument, as we're going to read it, is not on the broad terms, okay? Okay, but more specifically, between a difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos. So let's see. Dilma, says Rabbah, be'eruv v'hotza'ah l'Shabbat. Maybe it deals specifically with the issues of eruv and carrying on Shabbos being different from those same rules applying on Yom Tov. Ve'ein eruv v'hotza'ah l'Yom Tov kamiflagei. And that there is no issue of eruv and carrying from one domain to another on Yom Tov. Maybe that's what they're arguing about. Mar Savar, that one master holds, eruv hotza'ah l'Shabbat, ve'eruv hotza'ah l'Yom Tov. That one holds that the requirement of an eruv and the issue of domain change, I'll put it that way, applies to Shabbat, and it also applies to Yom Tov. Umar Savar, and the other master holds, eruv hotza'ah l'Shabbat, that eruv and transfer of domains applies to Shabbos, ve'ein eruv hotza'ah l'Yom Tov. But there is no application of the requirement from the Torah to say that that applies on Yom Tov. Kidichtiv, and not only that, Rabbah is now going to cite a pasuk to try to prove his view, right? As is written, "V'lo tatziu mi masa mi batechem biyom hashabbat." Okay, so in other words, he cited a pasuk saying you can't carry, right, or change domains on Shabbos. B'Shabbat en, b'Yom Tov lo. On Shabbos, yes, it would apply. On Yom Tov lo. Okay, now we're going to see there's a challenge to Rabbah's explanation. Okay, Rabbah tried to narrow it and change the focus of what their machloket was. Rav Yosef is going to challenge Rabbah. Matkifa Rav Yosef. Ela me'ata, if that's the case, says Rav Yosef, liflagu ba'avanim. Let them argue about another example, like something else that might be muktzah, like stones. Okay? Right? Ela midelo miflagei ba'avanim. Since they don't argue on a topic, okay, on a subject like muktzah, right? Shma mina, this must come to tell us that the argument here does refer to domain change and does refer to kutra letzorach or shelo letzorach. V'hotza'ah shelo letzorach pligei. That they must be arguing about instead, okay, transfer of domains. That's the actual issue of the argument. And it's in regards to whether we can transfer items that are non-foodstuffs. That's the point. V'af Rabbi Yochanan Savar. And so the Gemara now tells us, and even Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion, mitoch shehutra hotza'ah letzorach, hutra nami shelo letzorach pligi. That Rabbi Yochanan also holds that, as now Rav Yosef is trying to prove, he's bringing in support to show that there's another sage that has the same opinion, that the basic argument between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel is whether it's hutra letzorach, hutra shelo. Okay? That's what their argument about. The Tana Kame de Rabbi Yochanan, because there was a Tana who taught before Rabbi Yochanan the following: Hamivashel gid hanashe b'chalav b'yom tov, one who cooks the gid hanashe, okay, in milk on Yom Tov, ve'achlo, and then eats it, right? Lokech chamesh, he gets 5 different sets, I'm going to say, of Malkus. All right. Number 1, Lokem Mishum Vashel Gid. He gets 1 set of Malkus because he's cooking the Gid Hanashe, which is not considered a foodstuff. Number 2, V'lokem Mishum Ochel Gid. And he gets a set because he ate the Gid Hanashe. Number 3, V'lokem Mishum Vashel Basar B'chalav. And he gets another set of cooking meat in milk. Number 4, V'lokem Mishum Ochel Basar B'chalav. He gets a set of malchus for eating milk and meat together, right? V'lokem, number 5, V'lokem, as we go over to the next Amud, Mishum Havara, for because of burning, kindling. Okay, 1 second, let me. There we go. Okay. All right. Now,
But this, the assumption is that we made a fire specifically to cook to get enough.
right, and since it's not really a foodstuff, that fire is inappropriate, right? Inappropriate on a Yom Tov. So what happens? He comes back and says, Amarle, said to him, Puk Tane Lebra. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan tells him, Puk Tane Lebra, teach that Braita outside. In other words, that's not an appropriate Braita. It should not be taught here in the base medrash. Exactly. Right? Why? We're going to see. The Gemara is going to tell us. Havara ubishu eina mishnah. That the issue of burning or kindling and cooking is not in our Mishnah. Not only that, but it is not a Mishnah to be discussed because those are permitted items for Ochel Nefesh on Yom Tov. Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan continues. Ve'im timtza lomar Mishnah Beit Shammai. And even, I'm going to put, if you want to say that was a teaching, a Mishnah of Beit Shammai, Da'amre, because they say, Lo amrinan mitoch shehutra hutza'ah letzorach hutra nami shelo letzorach, because they don't hold by the idea that we can say that since, right, that it's for carried out for foodstuffs, okay, you may carry other things out to domain transition. Hachanami, here too, lo amrinan mitoch shehutra havara letzorach hutra nami shelo letzorach. They also wouldn't say then that any kind of kindling for foodstuffs would permit other kind of kindling also. Okay? The Beit Hillel, because we're to be the position of Beit Hillel. Kevan da Amre, because they say, mitoch shehutra hotza'ah letzorach hutra nami shelo letzorach, where they say that whenever it's permitted, the domain change for foodstuffs, right? It's also permitted for other things, right? Hachanami here too, mitoch shehutra havara letzorach. They would have argued because it would have been permitted for kindling for the purposes of foodstuffs on Yom Tov. Therefore, all right, hutra nami shelo letzorach. It would also be permitted for other purposes.
And therefore, you would not get
Right.
mashes.
He wouldn't
And
get
it can't be
malchus
vegetable.
for havara, at least.
What about the other 4?
Maybe for the other 4 he would. Okay?
Then you can also make sacrifices.
And that's the point, right? And so therefore, Beit Hillel would argue, yes, you could do the sacrifice. That's right. Okay? Which was our initial Mishnah, exactly, Zev. Right. Okay. New Mishnah. Right? Again, we're going to see a difference. Beit Shammai Omri, what do they say? Ein molichin chala umatnot lekohen biyom tov. Okay, we cannot bring, I'm going to use the word, the dough, right, challah, or certain gifts for a kohen. Those gifts were, right, with the foreleg, the jaw, and the maw. Okay, those were the three parts that were matnot kohen. Biyom tov, on the holiday. Bein shehurmu, whether they were separated me'emesh, from the night before. In other words, when it wasn't Yontif, Bain Shahurmu Mehayom, or whether they were separated on Yom Tov. Okay, so both kinds of Matnot Kahanim were forbidden according to Beit Shammai. Okay, whether it was separated the day before Yontif or on Yontif.
Giving it to the Kohen, was
The
forbidden,
Kohen.
but once you shechter the animal, you
Oh, you're jumping it. Hold
Okay.
on.
Sorry.
Right? Okay, we're going to get to that question. All right? Beit Hillel matirin, but Beit Hillel permits. Okay, now, what are they going to compare it to in just a moment? Do we have any other example? Yes, the other example of a gift to a Kohen would be Truma, right? Okay, so at some point we're going to see that the Gemara is going to try to make some sort of comparison, okay, between the challah and the matnot kahuna, right, to truma. Let's see what happens. Amru lahem Beit Shammai. So here's Beit Shammai's argument to say why they cannot bring those on Yom Tov from the night before or that day, those portions, right? Gzeira Shava. We're going to base it on a Gzeira Shava, namely challah umatnot, okay, the challah and these Kohen portions, matana Kohen, they are gifts to the Kohen, utruma matana Kohen, and truma is also a gift for the Kohen. Kashem she'ein molichin et truma, the same way you cannot separate tithes on Yom Tov, and therefore can't give it to the Kohen, right? Kach ein molichin et matnot. So likewise, you can't bring these gifts to the Kohen. Amru lahem Beit Hillel. Beit Hillel is going to argue back. No, that's not the case. In other words, it's not a real parallel. Why? We're going to see. Im amartem betruma she'eino zakai b'haramata. If you're going to say, you're going to use as a parallel truma, which is not right or suitable or appropriate, however we want to translate zakai there, for separating, in other words, for taking tithes. Tomru b'matnot shezakai b'haramatan. Okay, what would you say then? But in regards to these portions that are appropriate, suitable, or right to be separated, even on Yom Tov.
When you shech the animal,
You
you need a
right,
percentage
exactly.
number, so you-
Now, right now, because once you shech the animal, those portions go to the Kohen. By the way, those who were, they had to be generally offerings that were consumable, number one. And number two, remember the Kohen these gifts were not for food. These offerings were items that the Kohen could then sell, okay?
you would eat them.
He
Well,
could eat them, but he could also sell them,
it's on.
okay? So in other words, it was a big deal, all right? All right, so what happens now? Gemara is going to tell us. Kasal Gadata. What do you think is your opinion? Shehurmu mehayom v'shenishchatu mehayom. Maybe we're considering a situation that this whole discussion deals with portions, Kohan portions, that were separated on the day, namely on Yom Tov, okay, v'shenishchatu mehayom, but they were also
The animal was
right, slaughtered on the day. namely, v'shehurmu me'emesh, v'shenishchatu me'emesh. And also, they were separated the night before, and they were slaughtered the day before. Mani matin, then according to whom is our Mishnah? Lo Rebbe Yossi, it can't be according to Rebbe Yossi. Velo Rebbe Yehuda, nor could it be according to the Rabbi Yehuda. Ela acherim, but it must be according to acherim, to certain others. Okay, remember, by the way, acherim often is thought to be Rabbi Meir. Okay, the Tanya, as we taught in a Braita, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, Lo nichlachu Beit Shammai uBeit Hillel al hamatanot shehumu me'erev Yom Tov, that Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel did not disagree on those Kohen portions or gifts that were separated on the eve of Yom Tov, shemolichin im hamatanot shehumu mehayom v'shenishchatu mehayom. Okay, if they were brought, I'm going to put it that way, when they were brought with the gifts that were separated on the day and slaughtered on the day of Yom Tov. Lo nichlaku ela laholichan b'fnei atzman. This is Rabbi Yehuda's explanation, that they didn't argue except if they were bringing those by themselves.
Those that were separated yesterday.
Right. The yesterday's portion, gifts, compared to today's. Brought them together, says
Okay.
Rabbi Yehuda, that's
problem.
okay. But to bring the yesterday's gifts separately, no good. Okay, says Rabbi Yehuda. Right? That's his explanation. Shebeit Shammai omrim, that Beit Shammai says, ein molichin. Ubeit Hillel omrim molichin. That Beit Shammai says you can't bring them, and Beit Hillel says you can. V'kach hayu Beit Shammai danim. And this was how Beit Shammai reasoned as follows. Chala umatnot, right? The chala, right? The dough and the portions. Matana lekohen, as a gift to the Kohen. Utruma matana lekohen. We're seeing the same argument we saw before, by the way. Okay, and the truma is also a gift to the Kohen. Kashem she'ein molichin et hatruma. The same way you don't bring truma. Kach ein molichin et hamatanot. So likewise, you don't bring the gifts. And those were the gifts from yesterday, right? That's Rabbi Yehuda's view. And this is still his position. Amru lahen Beit Hillel, but Beit Hillel argues back. No, that's not the case. Im amartem b'truma, if you choose to refer to the example of truma, she'eno zakai b'haramata, that is not suitable for its separation. Tomru b'matnot shezakai b'trumatem. What will you say then about the Kohen portions that are suitable for their separation? Amar Rabbi Yossi. So now we have another view, okay, different from Rabbi Yehuda. He says as follows: Lo nechlaku Beit Shammai uBeit Hillel al hamatanot shemolichin. That again, says Rabbi Yossi, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel don't disagree on what Kohen portion should be brought, namely, Lo nichlaku ela al hatruma, that they only disagreed really about bringing truma. That was the issue. Shebeit Shammai omrim, that Beit Shammai says, ein molichin, that they don't bring. Ubeit Hillel omrim molichin, and Beit Hillel says they bring. Right? The kach hayu Beit Hillel danim, and this is how Beit Hillel reasoned as follows: Chala umatanot, the chala and the Kohen portions, matana lekohen, is a gift to the Kohen. Utruma matana lekohen, And truma is also a gift to the Kohen. Kashem shemolichin et hamatanot. The same way you can bring those animal portions, kach molichin et truma. So likewise, we could bring the truma. Amru lahen Beit Shammai. Beit Shammai therefore argues against them. No, that's not the case. Ima martim b'matnot shezakai b'haramatam. If you're going to say that these animal portions are gifts that are suitable to be separated, tamru b'truma, are you going to say in regards to truma, she'ein zakai b'haramata, that it's not suitable to be separated on Yom Tov? Acherim only. But here's our third opinion, right? What others say, lo nechlaku Beit Shammai u Beit Hillel al hatruma, that the Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel did not argue on truma. She'ein molichin, that you don't bring truma to the Kohen on Yom Tov. Lo nechlaku ela al hamatanot, but they only really argued on the animal portions as gifts. Shabbat Shammai only, that they argue, ein molichin, that you don't bring. Ubeit Hillel omrim molichin, and Beit Hillel says they do bring. So namely, now our Gemara says that if that's the case, lema acherim hi. Let us say then that this text, in other words, our discussion in our Mishnah, follows the view of acherim, velo Rabbi Yehuda, and not the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Now, Amar Rava, says Rava, mi katani shehurmu mehayom v'nishchatu mehayom. Where does it say, says Rava, in our Mishnah, that it teaches that they were separated on the day and that the animals were slaughtered on the day of Yom Tov? Shehermu katan. All our Mishnah says is that they were separated. Okay? Actually, it says shehermu me'emesh, bein shehermu me'hayom. Okay? So what happens? Ule'olam shchitatan me'emesh. And the fact, okay, that's why I just point that out, because I think Rava's argument would have been stronger had he phrased both words. Okay? And so his argument is that it would have been, what they must be talking about clearly is that the animals were slaughtered the day before. Lema Rabbi Yehuda. But then that we would say that is the same view as Rabbi Yehuda. Velo acherim, and not the others. Hold on, says the Gemara. Afilu tema acherim. You can even say it accords with the view of the acherim. Ubahanach the nishchatu me'emesh. And these are dealing with those that were slaughtered the day before. Ihachi, says the Gemara, if that's the case, Hainu Rabbi Yehuda. That would be again the same view as Rabbi Yehuda. Ika beinaihu feila. No, there is a difference, says the Gemara, between the Acherim's view and Rabbi Yehuda's view. Namely, what we're talking about is those secondary gifts. Okay, what was accompanying, right? That in regards to them, okay, that would be the issue. Okay, that you could, whether you could bring them with the offerings of the festival on the festival. That was the issue. Okay, now, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, Halacha Rabbi Yossi, that the law is like, excuse me, Rabbi Yossi. So what happens? Gemara wants to give us a little story. Remember, all the time, whenever Gemara throws in a story, it's to try to tell us the Maaseh. The story really reinforces what the halacha is. Okay, Rav Tuvi Berei de Rav Nechemi. Okay, a story about Rav Tuvi. the son of Rabbi Nehemiah, Havale Garba de Chamra de Truma. And he had a jug of wine, and the wine was Truma wine. Okay? Ata lekame de Rav Yosef. And he came before Rav Yosef, Amarlo, and he said to him, Ma'ila amtuye lekohen ha'idna? Is it possible that I could bring this to a Kohen today? Amarle hachi. And Rav Yosef answered him, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, Halacha Rabbi Yosef. The law is like Rabbi Yosef. Okay, so that would be acceptable. Now, a further story.
You can always bring a gift.
Ushpuzichne. Okay, the Rabba Bar Rav Hanan, the landlord or the host, okay, of Rabba Bar Hanan, Havale Asuriata the Chardala. He had a bundle of mustard stalks. Okay, in other words, the mustard seeds were still in the pods. Thank you. Right? Amarle, and he said to him. So the host, the landlord, asks, basically, right? He's asking Rabba Bar Chana Shaila, Amarle, Mahu lepruche umichal mignaihu biyomto. Is it possible for us to crumble up the pods and the mustard seeds and eat them today on Yom Tov? What happens? Okay, Rav, he says to him, Lo hava biyadeh. Okay, namely that Rabba Bar Rav Hanan, he didn't have an answer immediately, right? So what did he do? Atelekame de Rabba. He went to his Rebbe, okay, or one of the senior teachers. Amarle. He said to him, Molalin malilot mefarchinen kitniot biyomto. He answered him that it's permissible to rub with one's hands and to crumble various kernels of grain on Yom Tov, which would imply that it would be permissible to crumble the mustard pods.
With it, the other was a shinoi. Normally you don't do it with your hands.
Huge, right? Well, we're going to see that in just a second.
But that's
Okay. So what happens? Okay. So the Gemara tells us, Eitive Abaye. Abaye responds and tells us, Hamoleo mililot me'erev Shabbos, one who crumbles up. All right, the rubs with their hands is a form of crumbling. Erev Shabbos. The machar, the next day on Shabbos, minafeach miyad liyad va'ochen, can then sift it from one hand to the other and then eat these kernels on Shabbos.
That's not forward.
Well, let's see what happens. Avalo bekanon velo betamchui. But he can't sift it using a funnel or a tray or a basket or some sort of plate. Okay? In other words, he can't use a instrument. Right. Right? Hamolel melilot me'erev Yom Tov, one who crumbles it up erev Yom Tov.
But he didn't separate the.
Okay. Lemachar, the next day. Okay, on Yom Tov, minafeh al yad va'ochel. Again, he can sift it from one hand to the other and eat it. Afilu bekanon, va'afilu betamchui. And there he can use the tray or the basket and the plate. Avalo betavla, but not with a real board. Velo benafa, and not with a fine sieve. Velo bekavra, and not even with a coarse sieve. Okay? So what happens now?
So you can do it for yourself, but you can't make it for company.
Well, could be.
Yeah.
May Erev Yom Tov and Biyom Tov Lo. That would seem to imply that from the evening of unto Yom Tov, yes, you could do it, but on Yom Tov yourself, no, you cannot. Wait a second, says the Gemara. Afilu tema biyom tov. You might even say on Yom Tov. Va'ide detana resha me'erev Shabbos. And we might therefore say that since the Tana taught initially and used the language of Erev Shabbos, Tana Sefer Nami me'erev Yom Tov, that he also literarily, so to speak, or just orally used the same style and referred to Erev Yom Tov. In other words, he wasn't saying it for halachic purposes, but stylistic purposes. Im came, says the Gemara, if that's the case, matzinu trumaj hazakai baharamata. Therefore, it seemed that we find that it's possible to have tithes that are suitable for separation on the holiday. Utsnan lo. But we have a Mishnah elsewhere that teaches us no, that you can't tithe on Yom Tov. Im amartem betruma. If you're saying then regarding truma, she'eno zakai baharamata v'chulei, that it's not suitable for being separated on Yom Tov, lo kasha. Maybe it's not really a problem. We'll just go over a little bit. Rabbi Yossi beRabbi Yehuda. Why? Because one is the view of Rabbi, and the other is the view of Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, who teaches in a Braita, Hichnis shibalin lasot mehen esa. If one brought in stocks, right, in order to produce dough, right? Ochel, in other words, you've got kernels of wheat that you're bringing into your home. Okay, at what point is your bringing in those kernels of wheat? Are you chayav truma? That's the issue. Okay, so he says, right, in this Braita, when you bring these kernels of wheat into your home, okay, to make dough, ochel mehen ari upatur. One might snack on them, nibble on them, right? And not a real meal, but just a forspice or just something to hold you over. And you are exempt from taking truma, exactly. Okay. Lemolalan b'melilot Rabbi mechaye. But if you start crumbling them, even with one's hand, Rabbi would say you are obligated to do truma, right? But Rabbi Yossi beRabbi Yehuda poter. But Rabbi Yossi beRabbi Yehuda says no, you're still exempt from taking truma then. Why? Let's just go on a tiny bit more. The Rabbi Yossi beRabbi Yehuda nami mishkachet la kigon shehechnis shibalim laasot mehen esa v'nimlach aleihen lemolalan biyom tov tetavla biyome elamai truma, etc., etc. Okay, so Rabbi Yossi really holds that in this case, he finds that when you bring them into the house, only when they're actually brought in clearly for the purpose of making dough, that's when it is clear that the person is becoming subject to having to give truma. Shechnis shibalim laasot mehen esa. Why? Maybe he changed his mind and just wanted a little snack. Biyom Tov, to do it on Yom Tov. Okay, so that's why the Tavla Biyome. Why? Because then he could do it at that point. We'll pick up there tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you.
Therefore, the Gemara says, my truma, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Everybody take care. And let's hope everybody stays well, given,
All the best.
Take care. Have a good day.
Good day. Bye.
Harvey,
Yes,
okay, is Lee around today?
no, she just went out.
Okay, all right, I may need to give her a call later, okay?
Okay, not a
Thank you.
problem. I'll tell her.
Okay.